Hey, I'm Neil Hollingsworth from Yukon Gear and Axle, and welcome to Yukon Adventure Trek. 6-8 months ago, we started talking about this with John Herrick and putting a whole bunch of friends together, from publications to adventure seekers to our drivers to our ambassadors. We also chose the Pacific Northwest because we've all been to Moab, we've all been to Southern California, and we've never had everybody up in our backyard, which is up in Everett, Washington. We found the Washington Backcountry Discovery Route, and that's what you're going to see all the mileage from in the next 3 days. So, welcome to the program.
We basically met in Sham something town, I don't know. Packwood. We met in Packwood, which was this town in the middle of nowhere, and started driving over tiny little rocks with our Jeep trucks. It really wasn't like a hardcore rock crawling trip, but it was more just about like cool back roads, kind of scenic, lots of big cliffs and mountains and stuff like that.
The cool thing about this trip is it was low key. The pace was perfect. Everybody had a good time. We were covering 100+ miles a day through this remote backcountry of northern Washington, or Middle Eastern Washington. I got to see a place in the country I've never been to, so for me this was rad. This was a vacation.
So I was pretty stoked to come up here to the P&W and do this because I've never been up here wheeling. Actually, I've come up here a lot for like the import scene and muscle scene, but I've never come up here for the actual wheeling in the dirt. I brought up a Mickey Thompson Gladiator for this trip on the Yukon Adventure Trek. A lot of stuff to throw in the back, and the wheelbase on those things is just comfortable.
I kind of ended up being the impromptu trail leader because had all the coordinates and everything mapped out, and Laura's my co-driver, and she's telling me, okay, we could go to this peak, we could go to this peak. So we took an off route and went up to a peak, and there was a bit of loose shale and dirt, but it had a bunch of roots.
Well, we had somebody rip off a valve stem, so we're going to take the Eagle back there and get it all jacked up and switched out. He's got a spare, so we'll be up and running in a few minutes. Definitely going for a nice walk. My Pro Eagle.
And everybody thought it was a punctured tire, but those tires held up really well, and it was just a ripped off valve stem. So we ran the Eagle jack down there real quick, got it switched out. 5 minutes later, he's back up and going, and out we went.
This is a section of trail that I've always wanted to do, but actually have not done it before. So it's been great. We're here from Washington, so this is our home area. I brought a 2004 Lexus GX 470. It's got Yukon ring and pinions in it, air lockers, bunch of fun parts on it. My normal wheeler is an LJ on 37s, but for this trip, it's not hardcore off-road. It's a lot of dirt roads and more mild off-roading, so it was the better choice for this trip. It was awesome. It's hot, it's dusty, but doing it in the grocery getter with the windows up and the AC on was awesome.
We brought two vehicles out here. My personal, I got a Gladiator, a JT Gladiator, and then we brought a full-size Dodge that we actually towed the Gladiator with and ran the whole trip with it. It's a full long travel setup. It's kind of a sleeper, pretty rad, but the Gladiator, that's my baby. I got it on 40s, 9-inch rear end, big shocks, big travel, ton of fun, but we got the tent on it, we got the rack, we got all our gear, road showers.
So the other reason I bought the Gladiator is because it has the most Yukon parts of probably all my rigs. So it started life as a 4-door Jeep JK Sport. So I actually bought an empty Dana 44 housing from my local Jeep dealer and did a Rubicon conversion. So I had to basically build a front axle. So inside the front axle are Yukon chromoly shafts with their heavy duty U-joints. It's got 513 gears, Yukon zip locker. On the back, same thing, because it wasn't a Rubicon, it was an open diff. Had to put a zip locker in there, 513 gears and Yukon shafts. And then at the same time, I had a transfer case I sent up to Zumbrota. It's a Rubicon 4-to-1 case, so I swapped out the case so I could have a 4-to-1 low range, and then the Yukon JK replacement drive shafts. Because basically, if you had a Jeep JK, that's exactly what you should put in it. Is all those Yukon parts, and it would work perfect for some wheeling like this. Perfect setup.
It was green, there were rivers, there was water. Then all of a sudden, we transitioned into more of like this like alpine kind of deserty feel, where it's a little more dry. There are big grasses. We saw tons of animals out there. it was perfect.
Well, John Matthews goes full race car whenever he can, and that's just the way John is, and I'm used to that because I've been wheeling with John for, gosh, almost 20 years now. You know, just like me, he threw that lift kit on that Lexus and came out here and beat on it.
We had a shock that came apart, and it looks like maybe an assembly error or something, but we had one shock that came apart, so we sourced a replacement. I actually had some parts friends help us out, and my son drove it over, and we put a backup shock on it for the rest of the trip, and the rest of it went well.
Here, what can I start putting away?
Everything out there I'm done with.
We like to take these vehicles out and really sort of push them right to the edge, and that's sort of part of it.
It's hilarious that Ian, who builds all these crazy rigs, has a self-inflicted failure like that. So I mean, that was completely a bolt that worked its way loose and a caliper that decided to stick itself into the casting of the wheel. But
so that was totally my fault. Coming over the pass on the way to Packwood, I found out I'd lost a bolt on one of my calipers, hit the brake, and the caliper spun on its pivot. Ended up poking a hole right in the back side of one of my rims, so it's kind of a bummer because I didn't bring a spare because I didn't think we were doing any hardcore wheeling, so I didn't have any spare tires, spare wheel, nothing. But Dusty loaned me his spare for the first few days, and then jumped on social media and we found a dude who had a welder. So the wheel's cast, and whenever you try to weld aluminum cast, it's tricky. Sometimes you can get away with TIG welding it, sometimes you can't. All just depends on how it was made. And like a cast wheel is basically, they just take a bunch of aluminum, they pour it in a big mold, and the wheel comes out the other end. A forged wheel starts as like a piece of finished billet aluminum, and they machine it out of the billet aluminum. So a forged wheel is easier to weld because it's actually the metallurgy of the wheel is a lot stronger.
Dirty, dirty girl.
The TIG just wasn't doing it. And he just mentioned, he said, I'd use a spool gun. And I said, you got a spool gun? Because that's not something most people have. But luckily, he did. He has a spool gun. He spends most of his days, I guess, fixing aluminum beds in dump trucks. And so he had a spool gun, so fired up the spool gun. Whoa, we got a gusher.
I guess we're gonna have to drive faster.
It's actually not bad for as big a hole as it was. That's the old electric glue gun, man. Glued it all back together. Life was good.
On our second day, we left Ellensburg and we went up to about 7,000 feet up in the mountains and hit Beehive Reservoir, and we were able to have lunch there, and we saw some cool eagles and some ducks and lots of fish, and then we cruised down into Kashmir. The parts get stressed, they do get beat on. You're not going to take a stock rig and do this over and over again. You can take a stock rig out there and it's going to hold up maybe once, maybe twice, but after time it's going to just get destroyed. But you put good parts in there and you don't have to worry about it, which was awesome with this group because everybody was running good parts. We didn't have to worry about, oh, we might break an axle on this, or we might have to tow this guy up because he doesn't have the right equipment.
What we usually do is we take a bunch of inexperienced people out and then we give them an experience. So we're always guiding, spotting, doing all these things. And what's really cool about this is like every vehicle just had their team, had their stuff, like knew what they were doing. You'd like, something broke or something happened, and then before you could even hear anything else, it was already fixed from that group, which was really rad.
Today is Founders Day in the beautiful city of Kashmir.
Today we got into about 6,500 feet, peaked out on the name of the peak. Nobody knows. Then we dropped down off the mountain there, and it was some really high-speed sections which were a lot of fun as a group. We were able to go, 35, 45 miles an hour on these dirt roads, which is definitely not like racing, but still fun as a group because a lot of the guys are race car drivers and they do pretty well in these Jeeps. So we had a really good time there.
Yeah, we were definitely we had Dustin Sexton leading us most of the time, so I was kind of stuck mid-pack for a little while, and then I worked my way up, and me and Dusty got out front again, and we were able to put a little space between us and the rest of the group and open it up and have a little more fun. And he was hauling ass in that JL, and I was right behind him in his dust. We were definitely moving out a little bit.
That was fun.
We had a good 45 mile an hour pace for about 25 miles, and that was a good pace. Lots of silt, lots of dust, and then we dropped down into what's called the jungle, and that's a little bit tougher section. Had to slow the pace down a little bit. Lots of brush.
I was kind of excited I didn't have like gridlock or one of those big wide rigs. I felt bad for Alan because I think he had the biggest, widest rig out here besides the 2500 Dodge.
We're driving through and I was like, ooh, there's like sticks poking out and big root balls hanging, like things that just want to get you. So yeah, my truck did fine, right? The thing's small and nimble enough, great steering on it. The Dodge, that's a big girl. On one of the tight sections, had a problem coming around a turn, right? You gotta remember, we're in the woods and we're not used to this kind of thing. So there's like trees laying down, and he got impatient, tried to make the corner. This is a long bed truck, and it ended up just taking part of this tree that was kind of snapped off and went through the condenser. So they lost their air conditioning, right? We thought it was a tire at first. We're like, well, that ain't a tire, but I mean, who cares? You roll down the windows and you just keep rolling with it.
Yeah, I probably got a few dozen extra pinstripes down the side of the truck, but that's okay, because I mean, I painted that truck with $500 paint, so I wasn't really stressed about it. There was a lot of trees leaning in hard on a lot of cars, so I would say probably everyone left there with a few Washington State pinstripes, as they would call them up here.
We were able to just sneak through a lot of that stuff, and there were some branches that drug down the side of the rig, but nothing all too worrisome. I was talking with a couple of my friends that we've been talking about doing this, and I said, hey, if we come back again and we do this, you've got your brand new JL and stuff, we'll skip this portion of the trail probably.
No flat tires, which is awesome. Mickey Thompson tires held up the whole time. They were awesome. I'm really impressed with these tires. They do really well in the mountains, and especially at high speeds too.
So coming out to the end, we're pretty disappointed that we had a little bit of a hiccup, but yeah, we rolled around the corner, and one of the ottle gladiators on the crew came around. He must have dinged one of these trees, and I don't blame him, man. They were everywhere in this section. But yeah, he got a nice little, what looked like a little dent, and then he kind of got out and looked at it, and like the whole side was caved in. We're like, ugh.
Ian, watch behind you.
We got the full-size truck through, so we're not gonna bring that up until you ask the question.
This trail is not about how well built your rig is. This trail is about just the cool views and the places you go. I would recommend it to anybody. I think if you've got a mildly built rig, this is the perfect trail to come up to Washington State, dude. Because it was just, I mean, you run it, drop into a small little town, a couple hundred miles later, you're into another little town. It was perfect, So I think I would recommend this to anybody who's in this neck of the woods to run this trail. It's not gonna be hardcore wheeling, but it's gonna be a heck of a good time.
We finished our trip. We're chilling in Lake Chelan right now, up in the east side of Washington. This lake is amazing. You can see to the bottom of this thing. This place is absolutely gorgeous.
Huge thank you out to Neil, Yukon Gear and Axle, again, proud member, Team Yukon Racer. Mickey Thompson Wheels and Tires. I'm very happy to be a part of the first annual Yukon Adventure Trek. I really hope this happens again and again, and the invite gets extended. So happy to be here. It's a good time.
Thanks, Neil at Yukon, for putting this whole thing together, bringing everyone together. Thanks, Mickey Thompson, for giving me your tire, so to say, for the week. I didn't beat on your Gladiator too much. We'll talk about that later.
It was kind of cool to come on the first annual. We're saying that so it makes Neil do this again. So it was really good to come on the first annual Yukon Adventure Trek sponsored by Mickey Thompson Tires.
Sounds like maybe Tennessee next year, but there's lots of places in America, so I can't say where we're going, but it's gonna be fun.
You know, it's great to be able to get out here, spend some time in the dirt, and have some fun with some friends.